Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time you are watching this. Today I want to do a bit of a antique, at least kind of antique book haul, because I have spent more money on books in 2026 already than I wanted to, with a little unplanned purchase, a unplanned online purchase of all of this stuff. But it's just such amazing books. I couldn't pass on them. I had to have them. I'm pretty sure you know the feeling. These are all historically very interesting books, some classics, and I want to talk about them. I love reading classics in general. I usually mainly read English classics, but every now and then also a German one. So let's start. The first ones I want to talk about are these three. These three are all by the same author. He's called Peter Rosegger. He is a writer and poet from the province of Styria in the old Austrian Empire, when it was still an empire. So he was born in 1843 and he wrote a lot of books, and his books are super famous in my area because I'm in Styria here. So it's kind of my area. I don't live exactly where he used to live, but the village that I was born in and grew up in is very, not super close, but it is kind of close to the places that he also mentions in some of his books, and to the place where his childhood farm is that he grew up at. And he's super famous in the region. You learn about him in school. Actually, I also learned about him in school, and everyone knows him, at least the name. Not everyone has read books by him, but everyone knows the name here. He wrote many stories about rural life back in the days, in around 1800, or like the mid 1800s. To late 1800s. I have read one of his books that is probably the most famous at our current day and age here where I live, and it was so nice to read it because it gives you learn so much about how life used to be back in the days. So I got more. I got 3 more. This one is not super old. This is a more recent edition. I think it's from the 1980s. I can't see when this was printed, but I think it's from the 70s or 80s. It's a beautiful edition though, with the little old picture in the front and the green. It's called Wanderungen in der Heimat, which translates to, I want to say hiking in your hometown, but hometown is not really the thing. I think you get what I mean though. Most of his books, or a lot of his books, as far as I know, have also been translated to English. I do, however, not know if they are still printed. Probably not. If I find any recent printings or old printings of his books in English, I will insert them somewhere here on the screen, in case you are interested and you can't speak German. And this one is about different hikes that you can take in the region that he is from. So I thought this was very interesting because I live around here too. Maybe I can take some of these hikes. And it's kind of a curated book that someone else put together with stories of one of his original books. The other 2 are the very old ones. This is, where's the title? Das Buch von den Kleinen, which means the book of the small, which means children. He's talking about children in this book. I've looked it up a little bit, and I think he's writing about his children in this book, so different stories of his life with children. Now this book is very old. It also has this beautiful, beautiful red paper in the front. I'm gonna see if I can find a year. Oh yeah, it's from 1910. It's very, very old. And as you can see, it is in old fracture script, Fraktur it's called, which is basically like kind of the old German printing font that was used to print books a lot before Antiqua came around, which is what we have nowadays in books. However, Fraktur was not common in many countries. I have looked it up, and Fraktur Latin was basically only used in the German-speaking countries and more up northern Europe, so Norway and Denmark especially. But Britain, for example, did not use this script ever. As far as I know, they used Antiqua, so you can read old books more easily than ours here. It was popular from the 16th to the 20th century, and then they started also printing in Antiqua, which is what we have nowadays in books, as I already said. So this is hard to read, but I will attempt to read it. Now, fun fact about me, I was able to read this Fraktur font almost perfectly when I was a child. I can't really anymore. I've fallen out of practice because I've then never read it again. But the story behind it, when I was a child, I basically grew up without internet access. I got my first computer when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and before that I really only had the TV or going outside into nature or spending my time with books, because I also never really was into gaming on consoles or something. That was all not really my thing. So I spent a lot of time with books, basically, is what I want to tell you. And I have always, since I was a very small child, I've been fascinated by antique books. And I had a few from my grandma, and every now and then I was allowed to get one at a flea market. So I had a few of these, and one time I actually read one of these. It was a very old book about the life of birds, so it was kind of a scientific botanical book, which is very interesting. I think I was around 9 or 10 years old then, so I was ambitious. Now, the thing with this old script is that some of the letters are quite a bit different. So the S, for example, looks more like an F, and that can really slow you down when reading. But it's interesting and I like it, and I'm going to read this one for sure. And the third one is called Das ewige Licht. Erzählungen aus den Schriften eines Waldpfarrers. This is a very famous one as far as I've heard. Stories of the scriptures of a forest priest. Kind of. And this one is also written in this old Fraktur font. I can't really see a year on this book, but it's probably a similar age as the other one. So let's move on to something else that I am so excited about. Look at this beautiful edition of The Life of Charlotte Bronte by Elizabeth Gaskell. Isn't this so cute? This is a tiny book. At first, when I took it out of the package, I was surprised because I thought this is a really big book, but it's so tiny. But it still has a lot of pages. It's about 450 pages. So the pages are very thin. Have to be a bit careful reading this. And the font is super small, super tiny. Now the special story about this book. Charlotte Bronte, you probably have heard of her, as her sister has written Wuthering Heights, which is very popular at the moment because the movie is about to come out in February. I'm also going to watch it, of course. I have also read Wuthering Heights, by the way, a few years ago. very good book, but if you have never read a classic before, do not start with Wuthering Heights, please. Do not do this to yourself. Now, this is the biography of Charlotte Bronte, one of the Bronte sisters who wrote Jane Eyre, for example. And Elizabeth Gaskell was actually friends with Charlotte, so she knew her personally and she has spent time with her. And that is the reason why I wanted to read this specific biography, because I'm pretty sure there's other ones, more contemporary ones, but this is the original one. This is the first biography that ever was published of her. And it was first published in 1857, only about 2 years after Charlotte's death. I read online that there's a few criticisms of this book that basically say that Gaskell sensationalized parts of the story too much. However, there's also modern sources that say that Gaskell is a very good source for Charlotte's actual life. So I don't know, I haven't read it yet, but I'm so excited, and this one is also on my reading list for 2026. I definitely want to read this. I also really want to visit the Bronte Museum, if I can afford it, because the house is eating up a lot of money at the moment. But anyway, we're moving on to the last couple of books. These all kind of belong together. This doesn't look like much, but this is so interesting. It's called Josefine Mutzenbacher. And if you're Austrian, maybe you have heard of it before. Not a lot of people know of it nowadays because it's a very old book, but it used to be very famous. The second title translates to the story of a Viennese, let's call her Lady of the Night, so my video doesn't get age restricted. This is basically the first big Austrian spicy book that has ever existed. It was first published in 1906. And it was scandalous at the time, and I have looked into it on a few pages. I'm not going to show you the pages because it doesn't really matter where you open it. On every single page there's explicit scenes. It's really something. And mind you, again, it was published in 1906. This one, which has the tape. This one has tape on the back. I bought this edition because it seems to be one of the first prints. The first page says 1906 from a private print. Now, the book was originally published without an author, because it was so scandalous, nobody wanted to be associated with it. I am, however, not sure if this is an original first print or a copy of one, because I have found pictures of genuine first prints online, and they have the heading and the logo down here in a red ink, and this one is all black, so I'm not sure if it's an original. It might not be, but it's still really cool, even if it's a replica. Besides that, I only paid around, I think, €6 for this book, so I'm fine with whatever it is. There's also no publisher in it, nothing. Everyone wanted to stay anonymous. Every page you open has some kind of explicit stuff. It's wild. And then I hear people complaining about contemporary erotic novels, and I'm like, this is not a modern thing. People have always written stuff like this. Don't have to complain so much about how bad people are nowadays. There has also been a movie made to this book in 1970, and after that the book started to get more recognition again, and many reprints were made by publishers, and that's where these come from. This is a mini edition. I saw this online and I just had to have it. It's the whole story of the book in mini books, in 4 minis. It's so cute. I paid 20 euros for this, so this was a bit more expensive than the other one. But they are so cute. I had to have them. I had to spend money on them. Yeah. The third one I have here is, so it's kind of a historical book about spicy fiction. I thought this was interesting. It was only 2 or 3 euros, so I got it, and I'm very excited to learn things out of it. I also really want to do a deep dive into antique and historic spicy books, because I have read some things about this book here alone that are so interesting, but it's too much for this video. I'm never gonna finish if I tell you all the stories. But there's one more story about this book that I found so wild. So the author is unknown. Officially, there has never been an author. However, the book was often associated with Felix Salten, which was an Austrian-Hungarian writer. Felix Salten also wrote Bambi. You know the story that Disney made a very famous children's movie about. So that's wild. That is so wild. I read that online and I could not believe it. However, recent research says something else, and right now it is suspected that someone called Ernst Klein wrote this book, which was also an Austrian-Hungarian journalist. I've read something that like the writing style and everything would fit better, so it's unknown, but there is a slight possibility that the same man that wrote Bambi also wrote this absolutely wild erotic fiction. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. I am so excited to read this. Also about my reading goals for 2026. Some of these books are on my list of things that I absolutely want to read this year. Josefine Mutzenbacher, for example. And as I already mentioned, The Life of Charlotte Bronte. And I also want to read at least one of the Peter Rosegger books. I have lots of other things on this list too, but honestly I still do not have a heating in this room, and it's about 14 degrees Celsius. My fingers and my toes are freezing right now, so I'm going to end the video here, and tell me if you have ever read any antique books or classics or any of these books and what you think of them, how you like them. So that's it. Goodbye.